In this video, we will be discussing how to evaluate functions from graphs. So to evaluate a function from a graph, we're going to follow these next 3 steps. The first thing you do is you look at the number that is inside of the parentheses. So for example, you may see something like this, h of 5. So we're going to look at the number in the parentheses, which would be the number 5. Then step 2, you're going to find the number on the x-axis and locate where that point lies on the graph that is always given. Step 3, then we're going to write the y-coordinate of the point on the graph as the final answer. So this is going to make more sense once we go through a few examples. So we're going to go through a couple different functions. So the first function is called the g function. So this line on the graph, this is referred to as g of x. So we want to evaluate the function at different points on the graph. So for part A, it wants us to find g of -2. So think of -2 as like your x coordinate, and we want to figure out what is the y coordinate at that point on the function graph. So this is the x-axis, so we're going to find -2 on the x, which is here, and we have to go up to get to this point on the graph. So that's the only point on the function graph where x is equal to -2. So when x is equal to -2, y is equal to +1. So my answer for the y coordinate would just be +1. Same thing with the next one. So for part B, I'm evaluating the function at g of 3. So 3 is my x coordinate. So I'm going to find 3, which would be here. And you have to go down to this point on the graph. And you get that point to be at 3, -4. So my answer would be -4 at that point. Next point is looking for g of 0. So 0 is here, so we would have to go down to get to that point on the graph. So that's at 0, -1. The next one asks us to evaluate the graph at -1, so that would be right exactly at this point. So that point is at -1, 0. G of -3, so -3 is here, so we have to go up to this point on the graph, and that's at -3, +2. And then the last one is g of +1. So +1 is going to be here, so this is the point on the graph, so that's at 1, -2. Okay, so let's try a few more examples on the back page until you start feeling more comfortable and really get the hang of this. So now we're looking at this graph, which is a little different than the first example. And this graph is our h of x function. So we want to evaluate that function at some different points on the graph. So again, -2 is our x coordinate. So -2 would be here on the x-axis. So we would have to go up to get to this point on the graph. So that point is at -2, +4. Then for h of -3 is here on the graph, or is here on the x-axis, so that's the point on the graph, which is at -3, +5. The next one is at +2, so that would be here, so we'd have to go all the way up to the top, and that point is at +2, +10. And then h of 1 would be at this point on the graph. So that's at 1, 2. And then h of 0 would be at this point on the graph. So that's just equal to 0. All right, let's try our very last example down here. So this function is our f of x function, and we're always going to start by looking at that x-axis. So let's evaluate the graph at f of +1. So here's +1, but we got to go up to this point here, which is at 1, +3. Then we're going to go to and evaluate at -3 on the graph, which is at this point, -3, 0. The next one is +2. So +2 is this point on the graph. So that's also 2, 0. And then f of -4. So -4 is here, but we have to go down to this point. So that's at -4, -4. And then the last one we have to evaluate is f of +4. So +4 is here. So that point is at +4, -2. All right, so hopefully you kind of have the hang of evaluating functions from graphs. Just think of them as ordered pairs on the graph, and you're always given the x-coordinate, trying to find the y-coordinate. If you have any additional questions, just reach out to your teacher.